Everyone always asks me if it was worth it. They want to know if the few months of passion were worth blowing up a 10-year marriage and destroying an entire friend group. The short answer is no. The long answer is what I am about to tell you. This isn't a story about a drunken mistake or a one-night stand with a stranger in a hotel bar. This is a story about how I fell in love with my husband's best friend and how we burned everything down to the ground. My husband, Tom, was a good man. That is the hardest part to admit. If he had been abusive or lazy or mean, I could play the victim. I could say I sought comfort because I was mistreated. But Tom was perfect. He was a provider, he was kind to my parents, and he remembered every anniversary. He was safe. But I have learned that human beings are not built for safety. We are built for the hunt. We crave the adrenaline of the unknown. And after 7 years of marriage, Tom was the most known thing in my universe. I knew how he chewed his food. I knew which side of the bed he preferred. I knew exactly how our weekends would go before they even started. I was bored to tears, and I didn't even realize it until David walked back into our lives. David was Tom's college roommate. He had been living overseas for 5 years, working as a photographer. When he moved back to our city, naturally, he became a fixture in our house. He was everything Tom wasn't. Tom was corporate, David was artistic. Tom was predictable, David was impulsive. Tom wore suits. David wore leather jackets and smelled like wood smoke and expensive whiskey. From the moment he came to our house for that first dinner, the energy shifted. It was like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. It didn't start physically, it started intellectually. David would come over for game nights or barbecues, and while Tom was busy grilling or watching the football game, David and I would talk. We talked about art, travel, philosophy, things Tom had no interest in. David listened to me. He looked at me with this intensity that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. I started craving those moments. I started dressing up
For barbecues, I started buying the wine I knew David liked. Whispers, I was grooming myself for an affair, even if I wasn't ready to admit it to myself yet.
The line was crossed on a rainy Tuesday in November. Tom was out of town on a business trip in Chicago. I had a flat tire in the driveway. It was such a cliché. I called David because I knew he lived 10 minutes away. He came over immediately. He changed the tire in the pouring rain, soaking wet, looking like something out of a movie. When he came inside to dry off, the air between us was electric. I handed him a towel, our fingers brushed, and that was it. The dam broke. We didn't even speak, we just collided. It was messy and desperate and filled with years of repressed energy. For the next 3 months, I lived in a state of high-functioning insanity. I was addicted. There is no other word for it. The sneaking around became a drug. I would meet David in parking lots, in cheap motels, in his apartment while Tom was at the gym. The risk of getting caught only made it hotter. I felt like I was living in a spy movie. I was the main character.
I felt young again. I felt desirable. I would come home to Tom, kiss him on the cheek, and feel a sick sense of power. I had a secret that was all mine.
But secrets are like cancer. They grow. They take up space until there is no room left for anything else. The guilt started to creep in, but not in the way you would think. I wasn't guilty about hurting Tom because in my twisted logic, what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. I was guilty because I was starting to fall in love with David. We started talking about the future. We started making jokes about when we are together for real. We created a fantasy world where Tom didn't exist, where we could just run away and be happy. It was a delusion. The crash happened at my 30th birthday party. Tom had thrown me a surprise party. All our friends were there, my parents were there, and of course David was there. He was standing by the drinks table, looking handsome and dangerous. Tom stood up to give a speech. He raised his glass and started talking about how lucky he was. He talked about my loyalty. He talked about
how I was his rock. Exhales sharply. He looked at me with such pure, unadulterated love that I felt like I was going to vomit. I looked across the room at David and I saw a flash of something in his eyes. Jealousy, anger, guilt? I couldn't tell.
Later that night, after everyone had a few too many drinks, David cornered me in the kitchen. He was drunk. He told me he couldn't do it anymore. He told me he loved me and he wanted me to leave Tom that night. He was loud. I tried to hush him, pushing him toward the back door, terrified someone would hear. I was whispering, begging him to calm down, telling him we would talk about it tomorrow. I didn't see Tom standing in the doorway. I don't know how long he had been there. I don't know how much he heard. But when I turned around and saw his face, I knew my life was over. He didn't scream. He didn't throw a punch. He just looked at David, his best friend since he was 18 years old, and then he looked at me. His face went completely pale, like the blood had been drained from his body. He simply said, "Get out, both of you." The silence in that house was louder than any scream. The party stopped. The music died.
50 people turned to look at us. My mother was holding a slice of cake, her mouth open in shock. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. There was no explaining this away. There was no lie that could cover the intimacy of the argument David and I were just having. We were exposed.
I left with David that night. We went to his apartment. You would think that finally being together, out in the open, would be a relief. It wasn't. It was a nightmare. The fantasy evaporated the moment reality hit. Without the secrecy, without the thrill of the forbidden, all we were left with was the wreckage we had caused. We sat on his couch in silence, realizing that we were two terrible people who had done a terrible thing. The fallout was nuclear. Tom filed for divorce immediately. He blocked my number. He blocked David. Our friend group had to choose sides, and guess what? Nobody chose the cheaters. We were pariahs. My parents were ashamed of me. My dad wouldn't look me in the eye for months. I lost my home, my reputation, and my stability. And what about David? The great love of my life? It lasted 3 months. Relationships built on betrayal rarely survive the light of day. We were constantly paranoid. If he was late coming home,
I thought he was cheating on me. If I was on my phone, he thought I was talking to someone else. We knew what the other person was capable of. The trust was broken before we even started. The passion turned into resentment. We fought constantly, blaming each other for the mess we were in. Eventually, he took a job in another state just to get away from me.
Now, I live in a studio apartment across town. I work a job I hate. I scroll through social media and see pictures of Tom. He looks happy. He looks healed. He is traveling, he has a new dog, and he has a smile that doesn't reach his eyes anymore. I took that light from him. That is my legacy. I learned the hard way that the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. I set my own lawn on fire chasing a mirage. If you are watching this and you are thinking about crossing that line, thinking that nobody will find out, thinking that you are special, let me tell you something. You are not special. You are just holding a grenade. And when it goes off, it doesn't just hurt you. It destroys everyone standing close to you. I would give anything to go back to that boring Friday night on the couch with Tom. I would give anything to be bored again, because boredom is a
luxury. Peace is a luxury. And I traded it all for a cheap thrill that left me with nothing but a story to tell strangers on the internet. Don't be like me. Don't be the villain in your own life. Wake up before it's too late.